Welcome to Universal Basic Kalshi Guys. We're breaking in to talk about the emerging market on who's going to replace Pam Bondi as Attorney General. I'm here with our producer, Amir. Amir, what's up?
Hi, Evan. Happy Easter Sunday.
Yes, a Muslim and a Jew have gathered in celebration. It seems highly appropriate. Do you have any resurrection myth in Muslim tradition?
I don't think there's a resurrection myth, but I think there is also the common theme is that Muhammad went to the moon and split it in half.
Is that for real?
I think so. Yeah.
Why is there a full moon then? Did he put it back together?
Potentially, I don't know. Maybe God put it back together, but I don't know. I don't engross myself in those details.
All right, let's talk. Boy, I'd be very interested to explore this. Let's talk Attorney General stuff. So I'm in on this one, Amir. Medium bet. I have a pretty strong position. Are you in on this yet? I don't think so, right?
Not yet. No. I'm just not confident in Trump's ability to stick to one thing.
We'll figure out what that means in a second.
Yeah.
So let's talk this through for a second. One notable change that's happened here is that the first Trump administration was marked by an apprentice-paced level of cabinet resignations. And the second Trump administration has been marked by what has been publicly reported as a no drama ethos. And there was supposed to be no firings prior to the midterm elections, but that shifted with Kristi Noem and now with Pam Bondi and chance of some others.
Well, I'll just say before we get into Pam Bondi, boy, did Trump time the Kristi Noem thing right on time with everything happening with Noem's husband and the scandals coming out with that.
Oh, well, I would actually, we have a lot of folks who listen to this aren't in the United States. So tell them a little bit about what the story was with that. I'll just say, as you do, it's entirely possible, I dare say likely, that he knew that before we did.
Absolutely. Yeah. Before it leaked to the press. Yeah. Because the Daily Mail was the one who broke that story. And essentially it was that, Noam's husband is a prolific, use that word, intentionally cross-dresser who has this double life. And there were, rumors of infidelity in that relationship anyway with Corey Lewandowski, his full name, and he and Noam. So this wasn't necessarily surprising, but it's out there.
Lewandowski was briefly, on two occasions, Trump's campaign manager during the first Trump campaign, or he was first campaign manager, and then he left, and then he returned in another role in the apprentice style, courtroom shenanigans of the first administration. Now, of all the reasons, and of course this doesn't matter to the bet, but of all the reasons to have fired Noem, that one would have been irrelevant to me. Whether her husband is a cross-dresser or not has no bearing on her jobs.
Can't say the same about MAGA Republicans.
That's right. It's off-brand for them. I would have been more concerned about, classifying victims as terrorists, as domestic terrorists, but that's how it goes. So Bondi's in a somewhat different situation. We briefly talked a little bit about what precipitated her firing in our last stream.
Right. You suggested it was mostly due to the mishandling of the Epstein files, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I started there. I mean, there are other factors that have been reported as you flagged when we had that conversation. So the handling of the Epstein files is one. I mean, the other that's most commonly reported in the press is that Trump is dissatisfied with the level of aggressiveness with which she has pursued cases against his rivals.
Are you familiar with those attempts from Bondi? I did try to read into it, but there doesn't seem to be any actual court filings of Bondi trying to go after the Obamas or the Bidens or anything like that.
Well, he was greatly annoyed by the prosecutions or failed prosecutions of Letitia James and James Comey.
Right.
So I think this is relevant to the analysis that we're going to have here. And I'll just give my take on this. She failed in those prosecutions because they didn't commit any crimes that are prosecutable. I mean, it's very difficult. It's not that difficult to charge someone with a crime in the United States. And she failed to secure a grand jury indictment with Comey, which the Trump administration has appealed the dismissal of. So famously, grand juries would indict a ham sandwich. It's a very, very low bar of proof. But she failed with that, which suggests that Comey, didn't commit a crime. And the charge against Letitia James was for mortgage fraud. And I mean, obviously, I'm only reading what's reported, but doesn't sound like there's any evidence of criminal intent whatsoever. And it's very difficult for him to accept. So you need to get the grand jury to indict, and then, you need to get a unanimous verdict from 12 jurors, and the jury process in the United States is still has great integrity. So if that really is his motivation, now maybe that his motivation is more that he wants to see their lives disrupted in the way that his life was disrupted.
Right. Well, it hasn't gotten that close yet. I mean, Hillary Clinton was, asked to show up and appear at those depositions regarding the Epstein files, but really, at the end of the day, it was a nothing burger.
Right. I mean, sure. But I mean, he would like, I think, an indictment is a different level of disruption in someone's life than a deposition. Yeah. Sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, all right. So let's talk through this market a little bit, because I do think there's a bet here. Again, just to lay this out, just because I think there's a value. First of all, it doesn't mean I'm right. You may disagree with me. And this is going to be, I would hardly say there's a certainty here. I just think the odds in the market are off. So the leading candidates are Lee Zeldin, who's the current director of the Environmental Protection Agency and got his start in Suffolk County politics. He's actually from my hometown, East Meadow, New York. I think he went to Albany Law School, and he's the director of the EPA, and I went to Harvard Law School, and I'm talking to you, Amir, but anyway. So just goes to show you who you cast your lots with. And Todd Blanche, who's the current Deputy Attorney General and has been appointed interim by Trump. The market does not consider his appointment as an interim to satisfy the condition of the market. It has to be a nomination and confirmation by the Senate.
Got it.
So, and prices are right now, what is it at? Zeldin's approximately 55 to 60 cents. It's ranged. Right. And so I'll just, I don't want to bury the lead here. I'm in on Blanche. I got a fair amount at 16 cents and some at 20 cents. So he's greater than 4-to-1 odds. What's your take from where you sit and what you've read about it?
So I'm of the mind that Trump really fired Bondi because of her inability to prosecute or adequately prosecute Trump's political opponents. Right? She just failed at multiple different attempts at this, and I don't know. I don't. When we talk about all of these people on the list, I don't necessarily see anybody on this list who'd be able to do that. And I also don't know if Trump necessarily wants this to go through as well. Right. You had a lot of instability within the MAGA coalition, actually, when Trump was trying to go after his political opponents. And like we discussed previously, I think Trump is really trying to go back to that conventional presidential governance style. I think he really wants some stability. He is really paying attention to his approval rating right about now. So he would want somebody who would essentially stay quiet.
Okay. I actually more or less agree with that sentiment. Which of the candidates do you think most accomplishes that?
I think both Zeldin and Blanche do. It just depends on how Trump charges them, right? I think both Zeldin and Blanche are complicit enough to where if Trump just said, you just, punch in and then clock out and they'll follow suit.
Well, It's difficult for me to imagine when you say charging them, you mean the instructions he give them and carrying out their office. Yeah. So it's difficult for me to imagine him saying that to them. Well, let's just talk a little bit about who they are. So Zeldin is the current administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency and has been extremely effective in that role. I mean, effective from Trump's standpoint, catastrophically disastrous to the planet from my political standpoint, and I think from the standpoint of any climate or environmental scientist. I mean, they've done irreparable damage to environmental regulation in the United States and actively paid to, I mean, the federal government has paid billions of dollars to actually keep from wind farms from opening that were near the level of operation and would produce tons of clean energy, which I can only interpret as spite. I mean, it's extraordinary. There is no rational argument against wind power, but okay, be that as it. Oh, do you want to make a rational argument against? I guess me setting it up in that way makes.
Well, I mean, the cleaner, even more, ROI alternative would just be nuclear power. But Trump's not even, allowing access to nuclear anyway. So
fair enough. If you want to have a debate about what type of green energy to invest in, that makes sense to me. Anyway, that's not really the point here. I would think from Trump's standpoint, he's been an effective administrator. He was very solidly pro-MAGA. He ran, he narrowly lost the New York governor's race to Kathy Hochul last cycle. I mean, he's very, very squarely in Trump's camp.
So, I was going to point that out, that he did lose that election. And I think that adds a factor to your argument in that Trump doesn't like losers. He'd actually take someone, if you really think about it, he said it out loud, by the way. He's just said plainly, I don't like people who lose, because he thinks he wins so much. And so I actually think he would want someone who's perceived as a little bit of a stronger future attorney general, and that's why he may have an inkling to go towards Blanche. But that's honestly like an ego argument from the eyes of Trump, which I think is powerful enough to influence his decisions.
Zeldin is, he attended SUNY Albany, which is one of the best state schools in New York, but an Albany Law School, which is a pretty lowly ranked law school. Now, Blanche has somewhat better credentials, though not sterling credentials. He went to American University, which is a fine college in D.C., and Brooklyn Law School, from which he graduated cum laude. He then had a more conventionally successful career as a litigator. So he was a U.S. attorney, an assistant U.S. attorney, meaning he was a prosecutor in the federal office in the Southern District of New York for about a decade. He had a reputation, from what I know, and I mean, I don't know him personally, but he worked at the same firm that I summered at, and so I know some people who know him. And he wasn't regarded as an ideological zealot. He was just an attorney, and he was a partner at a law firm called Cadwalader, Wickersham and Taft, this is the place that I worked at ages ago, but a white shoe firm, very well regarded. And then he broke off and he started his own firm and represented Trump in a series of prosecutions, including the federal hush money trial, which including the New York State hush money trial, which Trump lost. So on the loser argument, one might think that he might not have liked Blanche, but ultimately, effectively, his sentence was suspended. And by all accounts, he had trust in Blanche, and Blanche was sent to the AG's office as number 2 there. Okay, let's talk about some of the other folks that have been mentioned. Just give you up to the minute as we're doing this, pricing on who Trump on. Okay, so as we're doing this, Zeldin is at 45 cents. Blanche is up slightly. Oh, I'm up to 24 cents. Jeanine Pirro is at 8%. Ken Paxton is at 5, and Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, is at 3 cents. There are other really, really implausible names here. Ron DeSantis, there's no market for. Okay. So Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, who does have more legitimate credentials. He clerked for Sam Alito as when Alito was a circuit court judge, and then on the U.S. Supreme Court. But that would require abandoning a Senate seat. Lee has said he's not interested in the job, and even though I think the Republicans are likely to retain control of the House, I don't think it's a certainty, and I can't imagine them introducing any uncertainty into that situation. So
Republicans hold control of the Senate, you mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would create a risk of a flip in the seat.
Correct.
I just can't imagine it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Trump doesn't necessarily chase accolades or credentials, really. I mean, if you look at his cabinet, they're not necessarily all Harvard Ivy Plus grads.
Oh, it's a great point. And in fact, it's been a major pivot here. He used to be very responsive, sensitive to things like that. But one thing he's done, and as you know, I'm very critical of elite colleges and America's obsession with elite degrees in lots of ways. But he's crapified the federal judiciary. I mean, he's routinely appointed people with marginal credentials. Emile Beauvais' nomination as a circuit court judge is insane from a qualification standpoint. But so I think.
What about Amy Coney Barrett?
Oh, Amy Coney Barrett is very well credentialed, as is Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. I don't think it's irrelevant to him. I don't think it's irrelevant to him, but I don't think that's going to make a difference here because there's no one in this market that has sterling credentials that he would perceive as adequately loyal.
Right.
Okay. Jeanine Pirro, former Westchester District Attorney, television personality, is trading at 8 cents. She's currently the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia is controlled by Congress. So that's an unusually important appointment. I would be extremely surprised by this.
Remind me, is she still on Fox? Because isn't that where she really gained her real celebrity status from?
No, I haven't seen. I mean, I don't watch much Fox, but I haven't seen her on TV. I think she does the job. She's 74 years old. He doesn't fit. She doesn't fit the appearance type that he's generally drawn to, which is not irrelevant. She's also modestly educated. She went to Buffalo and also to Albany Law School. For folks who are not from the United States, like in the legal hierarchy, being a district attorney is just completely different than being a U.S. attorney. So other than Trump, U.S. attorneys, which are nominated effectively by the president through the attorney general, are like the cream of the crop. And even during, Robert Mueller, a great example, even during Republican administrations, you're getting people with sterling credentials and generally unimpeachable reputations for character. This would be a big level up for Pirro. My gut says that he would think it's too big a job for her. I mean, he's rewarded her for her loyalty with the job that is already kind of above her grade. I guess anything is possible, but I think if he had wanted to put her into the Attorney General's office, he would have done that already. I would be very surprised by this.
Got it. I'm curious though. I have a quick question about William Barr as his former attorney general. So he, in my opinion, at least how a lot of people perceived it at the time, almost had a conflicting and almost like as equally as powerful as a role as Trump did when all these different scandals were going on. And I'm curious if you think that he would try to avoid something like that, or if he would want a strong character in that position.
Well, he was deeply frustrated by Barr in the end, right? And in fact, Barr has broken with him completely. So Barr was supportive of him with respect to the Mueller investigation, but I can't imagine Barr Trump appointing anybody with Barr's level of credibility and independence. Barr had been he had been Attorney General for Bush. I mean, there's nobody on the list like that.
Okay. I think the only reason, I was also kind of leaning towards the same thought. And the reason why I ask it is because that would probably, make us come to the conclusion that he would want somebody greener to the job.
Well, Barr is a rare example of somebody who returns to the job, right? So everybody is green to it in the sense that there are very few existing attorney generals who become attorney general, right? So nobody has the most direct experience, but there are people who are like a deputy attorney general or a very high position, or U.S. attorney in a prominent office. Comey would be, Comey, director of the FBI, but Comey would be the sort of person who would have that type of credentials. There's nobody on the list like that. So I feel like when you say greener, I'm translating that as someone he can dominate.
Exactly. Right.
Okay. So I think that's what's going to come. So Pirro would be dominable. Mike Lee might not be. And I'd be shocked if Mike Lee got the job. Let's dispense with Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton, who's in primary for the Republican nomination for the Texas Senate. He's super MAGA. There's no doubt about that. That would be the most loyal person imaginable. And was Attorney General of Texas, but has been involved in multiple ethics investigations and was impeached on a bribery charge. It's very, very hard for me to see that.
I agree. I actually agree because the next in line, or people suspect to be next in line in these line of firings, is actually Lori Chavez. And, same deal with her. The only reason why Trump is inkling to fire her is because there's so many of these scandals going on with her husband, her team, her staff. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, I just can't see him surrounding himself with somebody that has a record like that. The only plausible reason would be, I think the Republican seat is much safer if Cornyn prevails in the primaries, who would be a way of getting Paxton to withdraw from the race. But he doesn't need to make him attorney general to get him to do that. He can make him ambassador to Honduras or wherever, and it'll accomplish the same thing. And Paxton, Pirro feels to me like she belongs around 1 to 2%, 1 to 2 cents. Paxton feels to me like he belongs at about 0.1 cent. I mean, it's very, very hard to imagine. Mike Lee feels like he belongs at a cent. Okay. The other two are much more plausible, but I have a strong position between them. So Blanche is the interim attorney general, and multiple sources reported saying the job is his to lose. I think if Zeldin is nominated instead of Blanche, you get a news cycle which would be about Blanche not having worked out. And that, I think he wouldn't want that. I also think he quite clearly has a great deal of trust in Blanche. Now, Zeldin creates complications. So first of all, Zeldin has to be confirmed. he was confirmed as director of the EPA, but he then has to nominate somebody to replace him at the EPA. And Zeldin has no direct experience in the AG's office or anything analogous to that. There has been plenty of reporting, including on Fox, that Zeldin was the most likely replacement, which is the basis for his being the favorite. So it feels fair to me for him to be the favorite, but it doesn't feel right for me for him to be the favorite by a margin of 2 or 3 to 1. I don't think I think the relative odds are too high. And on Polymarket, I looked at Polymarket and predicted there's a much lower disparity. The market is structured differently. Now, I think a very plausible scenario here, and it's keeping me from tying up a lot of money, is that Trump effectively leaves Blanche in as the interim for a prolonged period of time through the election, and then either gives him the job or goes in another direction. So I think this market could take a very long time to resolve. Actually, I would bet if Kalshi had a market on who's appointed, say, by June 1st or something like that, I mean, there's nobody's going to be confirmed before June 1st. But it feels to me like I actually would have Blanche as a slight favorite over Zeldin. I think that Trump feels some loyalty to Blanche and that he wouldn't have appointed him interim if he didn't have a significant thought of allowing him to have the job.
Right.
So I think Blanche is going to audition. Now, so it feels to me, if this were like, 40 cents each and everybody else combined for 20 cents, that feels to me right. So at 20 cents, and certainly at sub 20 cents, I have a bet on Blanche. And I'm worried I'll have to hold on to it for a long time. My hope, this might actually be a bet and try to sell as opposed to a bet and hold through.
Right.
Just because it could take 7 or 8 months. Now, let's just go back to what you said earlier. You were talking about Trump's desire for prosecutions. Okay. Right. Well, let's think through how that plays out here. Neither's going to be able to produce what he wants.
Pretty much, yeah. That's what I was thinking. And I don't know if Trump wants that anymore.
You mean because you think it creates a risk of excessive partisanship in the lead up to the midterms, or?
Yeah, and just it adds fuel to the fire for Democrats and their ability to say, look, Trump continues to be a corrupt president. And I think I fully agree with what you were saying before, that he's going to try to be a very conventional, safe bet, especially up to the midterm elections.
Okay, so I always say, what's this bet really about? That to me is what this bet is about, that he is going to appear to be more conventional in the run up to the midterms. Now, after that, he's going to be a lame duck, and I don't know how that'll, be a lame duck. Perhaps he'll resolve that by announcing that he's going to run for a third term in violation of the Constitution. But I think what would seem most normal here is what he's done, which is to appoint the interim, who is a 10-year record as an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District, and give that person the opportunity to hold down the job. I'd be surprised if there's a wild card anytime soon.
Now, you said that Trump would care that the news cycle would be about why Blanche didn't work out. Why do you think that is?
I think he's invested in there being less drama within the administration. And I think they've succeeded in that. So the notable exception was Susie Wiles's interview with New York Magazine.
Right.
And that was the only major breach, whereas during the first term, you had tons of leaks. You had, op-ed in the New York Times by people who were effectively saying they were remaining in anonymously saying they were remaining in the administration to try to check his excesses. I've not read anything of the sort. So this is, it's Stephen Miller is the de facto, prime minister here, and he's populated the administration with loyalists. I think either Blanche, Zeldin, or Pura would satisfy that. But I don't really get why he would be motivated to disturb something that's working from his standpoint, which is the Environmental Protection Agency. And there hasn't been any major drama. I mean, aside from liberals like me saying they're destroying the environment, but nobody whose opinion he cares about has said anything. So I would have said I might have bought Blanche at 33 cents. I might have bought Blanche at 40 cents. By the time you're getting to 50, I'm hesitating on price. But at 16 cents, it was a buy for me.
The only hesitation that I have with Blanche has been his constant spats with Thomas Massie about specifically the Epstein files. I mean, he has just been ratioed at this point maybe 100 times or so on X and then on different platforms as well, where Thomas Massie just completely owns, every statement that he makes. It just turns out to be false, which I honestly think is like a huge stain that would, be on Blanche's back. For the future, for the foreseeable future, at least, because Thomas Massie doesn't seem like he's giving up.
You know way more about social media exchanges than I do. Just tell me a little bit more about the substance of some of those exchanges.
So, Thomas Massie will say, release the FBI files, right? And the FBI files concerning the FBI interviewing Epstein victims. Blanche will say, no such document exists. Just for example, I'm paraphrasing this like crazy, and Thomas Massie will show redacted or attach a redacted file that says this is the FBI file that Blanche is talking about. It's just every name is redacted. He'll say remove the redactions. These are not victim names. These are clearly the perpetrators of crime. And then Blanche will just go quiet, and then the to share ratio will just be insane. And then there'll be 1,000 versions of that.
I think that's a good point. I didn't know that Massie's a Republican from Kentucky. Yeah. I didn't know that they were going at it so much on social media because I'm more or less oblivious to that unless I read about it in the newspaper. Mm-hmm. But you are right that that Blanche has some link to the Epstein files. He's been very deeply involved in the production, and he went to prison to interview, depose Ghislaine Maxwell, yeah. Right? So that is not irrelevant. So Zeldin would give him a cleaner break with Epstein.
Exactly.
That's interesting. I mean, I could imagine that we're going to see some pivot on the handling of the Epstein files.
Well, according to them, it's done, right? There is no further investigation of the Epstein files. So maybe maybe his, thesis on Blanche, or Trump's thesis on Blanche, is that there is no Epstein issue anymore. Blanche continues on like it never happened. But I don't think that MAGA actually thinks that way. I think there is a huge portion of MAGA and even just independents in the rest of America that's just fractured because they're still in shock that so many prominent names were in the Epstein files and that Trump's name was littered in it. Of course, there's no direct linkage, but, people have their assumptions and suspicions.
Well, when you say direct linkage, it depends what you mean direct linkage to.
Direct linkage to crimes, or direct, committing of crimes.
Okay, but there's direct evidence of knowledge, and
yes,
right. I mean, there's certainly awareness, as there is for a lot of people in those files. I think you raised a really important. So I was, looking up as you were saying that. It would be the main value to me in Zeldin. That feels to me, but for the Epstein files, my gut says that even with the Epstein files, I mean, I've made this pretty clear that I think Blanche is like more than 50% likely to get the job. I actually feel like he's more like 2 out of 3, 65, 67% likely to get the job. Okay, now given the Epstein files, I was like, oh, we need as clean a break from that as possible. But it's not like he's not going to fire Blanche, right? He's not going to remove Blanche from, Blanche could return to his previous job. Anyway.
As deputy, you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think it's why, you know, these things are betting propositions and
right. And maybe, you know, I'll just throw out a thought out here. Might be wild to say, but maybe he would have already been, you know, nominated as AG, like Mark Wayne Mullen. I think it took him,
that's right,
Trump, what, a few days to do that?
It's
or
right.
I may be wrong about that.
That's right. So he's clear. He's expressed some ambivalence, or he's requiring him to audition for the job. Quickly, you mentioned Lori Chavez DeRemer. How likely do you think it is that she's forced out?
That's a great question. I don't think it's very likely, but if you just take a minute to read all the scandals surrounding her, currently, it's insane. I mean, she's been accused of drinking on the job. I mean, there are IG investigations into her staff, you know, misappropriating funds for travel. Her husband has been accused of sexual assault. I mean, it's just insane. And actually, I think she's trading well into the 30 cents.
Yeah, she's the favorite to be next to go. She's at 36 cents. Tulsi Gabbard is at 21 cents. Pete Hegseth at 17 cents. It's hard for me to see.
Yeah, I know we're not talking about the firing markets, but or the leaving the Trump administration markets, but I actually think Tulsi is just more likely to either leave or get fired. I think getting fired is really up next for her, right? Because she was friends with Joe Kent, and it seems that she agrees with what Kent is saying. And I really think that she doesn't have, you know, the wherewithal to actually come out and do what Kent did and say that Trump is wrong about Iran. And so she's, you know, letting herself kind of get fired by Trump.
I think the fact that there have been other firings actually makes it significantly more likely that there will be other firings. So once either you can say going into the midterms, look, we've produced an enormous amount of stability, no departures, but what's the difference between 2 and 3 or 4? You know, it's like breaking the seal. And once you go to the bathroom, you just keep going to the bathroom. So I think that's an apt metaphor. All right. So, so Todd Blanche is a buy for me, and I'm holding on to it for a while and see how it goes. Did I talk you into a position here, or
you definitely talked me into a no position to Perot, because I have seen her on Fox, and I gotta say, man, it's just not the best quality or talent out there. So I just don't think that's happening.
Yeah, I think that's very unlikely. All right. Amir, tell the folks how they can help us out if they're so inclined.
Absolutely. You can follow us on Instagram at UBK Guys, and on Twitter, or now known as X. Subscribe on YouTube. Make sure that all of your notifications are turned on. And then also feel free to comment under this video or this clip about what you think the next or about who you think the next person will be to get fired, or if you think that Lee Zeldin will take the job over Blanche.
And if you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast, that's great too. And if you want to shoot us a question, our email is admin@ubkguys.com. We're really happy to do that. And we'll see you for our regular stream in a few days. We're going to talk about market fixing and how to steer clear of it as an investor. Amir, he has risen. A very happy Easter to you and all of your Muslim friends. No, happy Easter to everyone out there who's celebrating. Happy Passover to everyone who's celebrating. And as a secular atheist Jew, happy Festivus to everyone else. All right, I'll see you in a few days, Amir.
Take care, folks.
Universal Basic Kalshi Guys was created and is hosted by Michael Horahan and Evan Mandery. Our producer is Amir Rasulov. Our theme song is Passing Trains by Nathan Eklund. You can follow us on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram at UBKGuys, or email us at admin@ubkguys.com. The content on Universal Basic Kalshi Guys is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute trading, financial, or investment advice. Nothing discussed on this show should be construed as a recommendation to buy or sell contracts on any prediction market. Trading on prediction markets involves real financial risk, and you could lose money. Always do your own research and consider your own financial situation before trading. The hosts may and often do hold positions in markets discussed on the show. Views expressed by guests are their own and do not reflect the positions of the show or its hosts. If you or someone you know is struggling with problem gambling, free and confidential help is available 24/7 through the National Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-800-522-4700 or visit ncpgambling.org.